Our insulators were worse. The fence chargers belong in a museum. And the only time they ever shocked anything is when they shocked us when we were working on it. If we could do it wrong, we did it. Okay? Didn't know any better, didn't have anything better to use. I remember one time when I was a kid, my hand was sweaty, and I was crawling across the fence, and I reached across and got a hot wire, and I couldn't let go of it. I still got 2 holes in my finger to death. It was a wheat burner. It actually grabbed a hold of me because it had a real long pulse. They're designed to burn through an object when they come up to it and then put power beyond it when they burn through it. Low impedance is actually lower voltage, higher amperage, short pulse, so when it comes to a wheat or an object, it tends to push right on through it instead of bleed so much down through it. Okay? Cyclic wave actually just shortens that pulse curve up a little more. It's actually a cleaner pulse, it's a shorter pulse. That's why you don't get the drain from these units that you get from some low impedance units. If any of you guys have ever used some of these larger stay-fix units and you put them on your fence, tell me you haven't seen the difference. I mean, who's using stay-fix units, let's say above 6 joule or up right now? Can you see a difference between them and maybe another brand new unit that you used to have? A lot of that reason is that shorter pulse curve. That also enables this remote control unit to be much more effective when trying to beat back through extreme loads. You know, it's still nice to know that when you get pretty close to that short and you may be down to 1,000 volts, this thing's still going to work for you. So it's a little bit about what we do there. We started, Cliff, about 2 years ago, developing, maybe 3 years ago, developing a new line of units. We started with our smaller ones. We're working our way up. We started what we call the dual mode units. Now everything in our lineup from 1 joule to 12 joule will run off of either 12 volt or 110. All you have to do is change the cord on the back of it. So that means they can work with solar battery, or 110, which is kind of handy. We've added a few other features as we go along to these units. You'll see on 2 of these units this window up here. And you'll see they have 4 terminals on them. We actually have a black terminal that can be hooked to a separate ground rod. And what that does is that monitors your earth voltage for you. So instead of having to get your voltmeter out and check your grounds once every 3 years, every time you look at your Energizer, it'll tell you how much voltage you have on your ground. And that's a time saver, and it's kind of handy. But it does that for you. It's just a little bit about how they work. We go from 1 joule. We did just go from 1 joule to 36. As of today, in Missouri, we are now up to 63 joule output. This is a 220 volt unit. It will not run off of 110. Some people are asking me, why do we ever need one that big? I've got guys with 36 joule units on probably 200 or 300 acres that at times wish they had more power because they have a tremendous vegetation load on their whole fence. You know, it's not necessarily, you know, if this thing's rated at 4,000 or 5,000 acres or something crazy like that. There's a lot of times in this country where it might be highly useful on 400 or 500 acres. That's the reason why when Dave considered bringing this unit in, I know that was one of his priorities because they deal a lot with that type of situation, especially when they're electrifying woven wire. You can have an unreal vegetation load on it. So it's just more guts to push through it. Probably one thing to bear in mind about that unit, I won't talk a whole lot about it, but one thing to think about is when you go up that much in power requirements, remember what I talked about when I talked about grounding and I talked about fence. We've just now doubled anything we would ever need to do with a 36 joule unit. So it's great to have that power. As far as I know, we're the only ones in the world that have it, but just realize you got to have everything else that goes with it. It takes all 3 of those to make your system work. Okay? With that, there's other things I can talk about, but I know we're running behind, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Dave, and Cliff and I will be back here and be glad to answer the questions as we go through it. Dave?
Thank you, Doug. Like Doug mentioned, he'll be around. As questions come to your mind, feel free to stop and ask them.